Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
They enhanced the Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement was not there earlier in India. Everything was only meditation. Only because of invasions, because they wanted to take it to masses, they created all these Bhakti type of things. All the festivals, culture, all this only because of preserving the Indian traditional wisdom.
But
Before,
Bhakti Marg
yeah.
somehow seems to be the easiest way out. It's innocent devotion towards the Lord. I mean, nothing to do with karma, gyan. I mean, gyan about gyan yoga or karma yoga. It's just simple bhakti and then complete trust and then you surrender.
Yeah,
I mean,
actually,
What I also feel, so it's not that easy, but Prachiti,
yes,
this is what it's not easy to surrender.
exactly. Yes.
actually, the Bhakti Marg, if you say Bhakti Marg, there are the way one has to understand Bhakti is totally different.
Yeah.
Different people understand Bhakti in different ways. The scriptures say that how you exhibit your Bhakti. For example, Maitri Bhakti is the way Krishna and Arjuna relationship.
Yes.
There is some called Dasa Bhakti. Dasa Bhakti is the way Hanuman with Sri Rama. The way with Madhura Bhava. Madhura Bhava means the way Radha with Krishna. So different types of bhakti. There how Vatsalya Bhakti, the way Yashodhara with Sri Krishna. So how, because all the disciples, if you see, we are coming in the same Indian traditional tree. We are all respecting our gurus too much. We are more connected emotionally than spiritually. So they're all Vatsalya Bhakti or Madhura Bhava, a lover's way. They treat the guru as a lover. So all these things, they must go from emotion to spirituality. Shift is not happening.
Is it not in a way same, because here also you won't require your brain to think, you don't have to use your mind. Surrender
That
is
is the point. Yes, that is why I think
so again you
bhakti
have
is
to
a
become mind thoughtless, whatever we call it. Is it not the same?
Yeah. Yeah. There is something called as Bhakti Navaratna Malika. So there are all different forms of bhakti. The surrender and all these things. Prapti, they call it as prapti. So the complete surrender. Surrender happens when you understand. Without understanding surrender, you can't force yourself to surrender.
Yes, you can't. It's very difficult.
So
the other day, in fact, only yesterday, we had this discussion as to surrender and resignation. There are two very separate words and separate things, but people confuse. They think it's all interchangeable. While resignation is sort of escapism. When you can't handle things, you want to resign and you show that you are not interested in worldly pleasures. And parallelly, surrender is something where you suddenly feel elevated, though you are not interested in anything, but you feel elevated and you let everything be handled by maybe your guru or whatever the higher force. And resignation is when you in fact resign from this higher force also. So a lot of discussion followed, but still I think the confusion does exist. And probably maybe experience will make things clear with time. For
I
me,
will talk about that.
so please do. It's very interesting. I really, I mean, I have mentioned this to ma'am as well. Whatsoever, she has given me a golden opportunity. And today, in fact, I'm able to interact with you directly. That probably I would not have ever dreamt of, or accessing and talking to you like this would have been impossible. But then, thanks to Jyoti ma'am.
So,
So
beta,
many a times,
this is surrender, sir. I just asked her once. Yeah, Prachiti, are you going to be the co-host for my show? I don't know. And after 30 years, is it Prachiti 91?
23 years.
No, 91 you passed out, I think. 91, 92.
29.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so after such a long gap, and I asked her without giving a thought, she said yes.
But then did you not post it? You only posted things first, ma'am. You started it. You had that hunch or whatever.
I don't know how I got your name. I don't know.
Nice.
But it clicked me after so many years that I should ask this girl. So it happened. This is surrender. This is what I think. I don't know.
Wonderful.
Your views on this?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's always good to have two people to interview because it becomes fun. We enjoy it.
You enjoy, yes.
And,
I
yeah,
mean,
and moreover, the speaker also, if questions come from different mental frames, they become more enthusiastic.
A knowledge pool.
Speaker.
In fact, it creates a knowledge pool, so we can actually have a good interaction. The
Yeah.
topics can be handled by two speakers.
Yeah.
Good.
Yesterday
So
night
thank
around 2 o'clock, one African sent me a message. He's a speaker. He's a speaker from Egypt. He sent me an idea. He sent me a PDF format. Uh, he owns some type of internet TV, internet IP-based TV channel. He said, "Why don't we start internet-based TV channel?" Yeah, I
Zia
think,
joins, I think.
yeah.
You can see Dr. Yugandhar here also.
Hi, Zia.
Yes, hello. Hello. Nice to meet you. It's an
Nice
honor.
talking to
It's a pleasure.
you.
Thank
My
you
pleasure
for
also.
inviting me.
Yeah.
And
Thank
I'm
you very
so
much.
sorry to keep you all waiting. It's just unfaithful with the internet gods sometimes.
Yeah.
No, it does happen because I think it was raining heavily in your Mumbai, no?
It was, but during the very heavy rains, internet was wonderful. And just today with the sun. But it's only in my place, in my neighborhood. So I managed to go to my sister's house and it was all good there. Thank you.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
So,
So
okay.
with your permission, should we?
Yeah. Mm.
Should we start? Well, yeah, it's going to be formal, Zia, because we're already late. So I think informal talks you've already had on the phone. Should I start
Yes.
straight away?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, greetings from India. Welcome to the World United Organization, Meet the Master series. I'm Jyoti Taneja, your host for the session today, along with Prachiti Garge as the co-host.
welcome, Zia.
There
Thank
are
you.
many spiritual and different spiritual ways of expressing spirituality, as there are spiritual persons. In fact, it's a very broad concept with room for many perspectives, and anyone can touch his or her spiritual side, in n number of ways. And it's our honor to have one such wonderful person, Zia Nath, with us, who is basically a health practitioner and a biodynamic craniosacral practitioner too, right?
Yes.
But along with this, what brings her to this platform is that she is a master of whirling mandalas. Sacred dances and spirituality are one to her. And what Zia just told me one day, and she says that body, in fact, science and spirituality meets. This is what you told us, Zia, that day. Right? So more from you, because, we are definitely going to talk about your sacred dances, your Odissi dance, and we have seen so many videos. But before that, something very, very basic. How was Zia as a child? Was she always interested in dances? And what are your religious beliefs? What is your family background? Let's start with that.
Okay. So coming to the basic, my family background were Hindus, from a Punjabi family. My father was, one of those survivors from the partition, coming from Pakistan before India was divided, and then he came into Delhi with his family. He came from a very poor background, so he's actually self-made. He's an architect, and he's one of the most renowned architects in the country and in Asia also. But he's been an inspiration for all of us because he really came from nothing. He used to paint on big signboards, on the streets to earn money to pay for his education. That's his background. And my mom is also Punjabi. We were Hindus, but both of them are very modern thinking, so they didn't impose any religious belief or any religious customs on us. I really remember growing up as a child, just having the identification that we belong to a Hindu system, but we can, my parents always told us, well, find what works for you. If you want to follow something, see if it makes sense for you. And even though my mom really is a Krishna Bhakt, but she didn't impose anything on us. My father is very scientifically oriented. So his connection with spirituality is through science. Being an architect, that's his religion, his work. And I remember as a young child, I was just very dreamy. That's all I remember about my childhood. I was happy to be left alone. and I was dreamy. I used to just get lost in thought and dreams. And I was always so enamored by nature, by rainy days. I wouldn't tell anyone, but quietly I'd be sitting, looking at a tree, having some strange conversation with God, like, if you're really here, why don't you drop a flower and things like that. I mean, I was 6, 7, excuse me for that. But
That's interesting.
very, I found
Artists are emotional.
we're emotional and a little, not in the logical realm.
Yeah.
So, and I would not be interested in the children's books unless they were all about mysticism and magic. I would like the horrors. And I remember picking up one of the books from my dad's library. It was about philosophies around the world. I was about 9 or 10 years old. And I got stuck to that book for 4 or 5 years. I kept reading it over and over again. It was so, I think that was my first dip and into the realm of philosophy, spirituality, religion. The book was talking about all the different religions.
What was the book about? Because 9 to 10 years is too young an age for anybody to understand, for a child to understand that it is philosophy.
Yeah, I didn't know it was philosophy. I was just really interested in reading different spiritual religion, organizations around the world. That is when I got introduced to Buddhism, Jainism, Shankaracharya, Confucianism, Zen Buddhism, Christianity, of course, the spiritual aspect of Christianity, Hinduism, Upanishads. I got introduced to all these ideas at that age. I was very interested in it.
At that age would mean 9 to 10, you mean to say?
I remember finding the book then, but it stayed with me for many years.
Right.
See, as a child, I would read bits that I could understand. And then as I kept maturing, I read more of the same thing and understood deeper, right? So I remember having that book with me for many years, and it was very torn, tattered. It was in some corner of my dad's library, which I loved. And I was always interested in art and dance as a child, but there are no dancers in my family background. And my parents are not really inclined towards culture and art. My dad is inclined in art, but through architecture, but not cultural arts. So they didn't really expose me to anything as a child. By the time I realized that this is what I really want to get into, I somehow didn't get any support from my parents or encouragement. They were just not tuned in. But when I was just starting college, I got introduced to Shamak Daval's training class, dance training. I jumped into it. I trained with him for about 6 months to a year. After that, he took me in his company. I danced in his company for about 7 years, which was wonderful. We traveled all over the country doing so many performances. He was like, he was like every teenage person's, everyone looked up to him. He was a hero because he got jazz and all the cool stuff, rock, pop, and we were dancing to all of that. We really thought we were cat's whiskers dancing in his company. So those were my very early beginnings.
It means it was not planned as such. It was just that there was a pull, I should say, right?
Yeah.
It was a pull. I saw one of your videos and it was like something, I found it something very similar to Sufi dances.
Yeah.
Is it something very similar to that? I mean, or you merged up two things, because not exactly that, but and whirling is not that easy.
Yeah. So the dance production that I have now is called Realms of Dance, and it contains in it, I've been specializing over the last 25 years. After I left Shamak Davar, I really dived deep into the exploration and study of sacred dances, which got me into sacred dances of Sufi traditions, that was Gurdjieff movements and Sufi whirling. And then a few years later, I got into the study of Indian sacred dances, and I found Odissi dance, that was really calling to me. It came from the ancient, temples of Odisha. Many of them are tantric temples. They had very beautiful stories. The dance was rebuilt in this, in the 20th, 21st century. It was recreated from looking at the dance postures on the on the temple.
On
So
the temples.
all of that was beautiful. So I really had a calling for that. I needed to get into something more ethnic, more from my background. And then I studied Odissi dance. And then my production realms of dance is now a synthesis of Gurdjieff movements, Sufi whirling, and Odissi dance. So the diverse.
That's Eastern and Western orientation, right?
It's actually more Central Asian. There's no Western. It's more Central Asia with the Sufi work. And then there's Indian.
Odissi is Indian.
Odissi is Indian. However, I want to say that whirling. So I don't say my introduction to whirling was through Sufi whirling. I'm not doing the classic Sufi whirling in my practice or in my performances because I'm a girl. Girls are not allowed to whirl.
Yeah.
In the Sufi community.
They don't.
They're not allowed. And plus then if I am allowed to whirl as a woman, I have to whirl alone, not in front of an audience. I have to keep my head covered and all that. But I never had a Sufi master. I didn't have a peer. My whirling was self-learned. It was learned under the guidance of Osho's insight. So
that was my next question. This would have been my next question. Did you have any guru as such, or it was your inner calling, as you say, or just an inspiration from the books and whatever you saw, or you had somebody to teach you or get into all this?
For whirling, no. For Gurdjieff, I joined the organized training of Gurdjieff movements that comes from the work of Armenian mystic George Gurdjieff, and there are Gurdjieff foundations, Gurdjieff centers all over the world. And there were some teachers who were teaching the Gurdjieff work in the Osho meditation resort back in the 1990s, 1980s. I got into it in the early 1990s. And so that I studied in a very organized way. However, whirling was a calling. I didn't have a teacher for whirling. I didn't have a human teacher for whirling, not in the living body. When I got into whirling, I used to actually see, I was studying Gurdjieff movements in the Osho meditation resort. So that was an intensive 6-week program in silence, 8 hours a day. You're in the work of structured movements, really fine-tuning your body, your posture, really intense work. And there's no socializing or fun. It was done in silence. It was like deep meditation through the body. And then I would go out and I'd see in the big Buddha hall, sometimes 3-4 times in the week, there was beautiful music, Sufi music, and people were just whirling. And I was like, my God, there was such a calling. It was, it's really like I was just melting watching that. And of course, I just jumped in, started whirling. I'd fall, then I'd again get up and I'd whirl, and then my body would spin really fast and I'd fall. And one, some senior gentleman looking at me came to me. He's saying, I just want to tell you, you should read what Osho has spoken about whirling. You should read what the Sufis have spoken about whirling. It is not about whirling very fast and falling. It is about whirling slow, sustaining over a long period of time. Then your whole body becomes a meditation. And that was so beautiful. So that was my direction. So then I started reading Osho's discourses on whirling, and he talked about the center, the cyclone, the stillness in the center, and the movement in the periphery. That was my guideline. And I was practicing.
This is one thing. This whirling really takes you over, right?
It does, because whirling is not an activity.
Yeah.
It's not an exercise. It's not a dance. It's a phenomenon. And when you have the right preparation and alignment in your body of your mind, that's your thoughts, your physical body, and your emotional space, when everything is in a quiet alignment, actually whirling comes and takes you.
So it means you actually have some other practices also in your daily routine apart from these dances. How are you doing other meditations?
The thing is,
what are your practices then to keep yourself aligned and stable? And
whirling is what keeps me aligned. Gurdjieff movements is what keeps me aligned. Odissi is what keeps me aligned. And I don't mean just a physical alignment. I mean
definitely.
Many dimensions.
That is internal.
Yes. Internal, external, with the society around us, with spiritual realms beyond us, all of it. This is my path. My spiritual path is my dance, is my sacred dance. I don't have anything else outside of it. I don't go.
That is something really interesting. You know, I'm curious to know about one thing. How many years it has been now that you've been dancing? Like,
In sacred dance.
yeah,
25, 26 years.
25 to 26 years. There must have been some experience, some moment when Zia was not Zia.
Yeah. So many. I need to say I'm Zia now for practical purposes.
Okay, that means you're treating your dance as a moving meditation.
You know, there's come a time with so much involvement and depth with the work, and I haven't strayed from the work. I really just dived into these disciplines and let the discipline unfold into me rather than me finding a direction in them. I've let the discipline guide me and unfold things in my life. So the evolution from that is, there's a lot of surrender.
Surrender to?
When surrender happens as an experience, there's nothing to surrender to.
No, like you are saying, it's kind of a meditation for you. And this keeps you aligned. I was asking you, do you have any other practice also? Because this is kind of a moving meditation, active meditation, you may call it, right? Do you sit in silence or some yoga or something of that sort?
Yes, I do yoga. I run. I sit in silence. You know, my work, craniosacral therapy, is sitting in silence a lot. So when I'm in my clinic, it's very silent, very still work. So to bring in the quality and element of meditation in a craniosacral session is essential, it's imperative.
What is that exactly about?
Craniosacral therapy?
Yes.
So it's a modern branch of cranial osteopathy. It's about 150 years old. It was originated by an osteopath. Osteopathy was originated by Dr. Andrew Taylor Still in the late 1800s in North America, which then developed in the early 1900s into cranial osteopathy, which in the in the 1960s became craniosacral therapy. And it's basically hands-on bodywork approach to work with fluid circulation, balancing alignment, decompressing restriction patterns, opening up fascial and lymph related tension patterns. So it works on the nervous system, fluid circulation works on the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, but it's with very gentle touch. So it's not Reiki, it's not energy exchange, it's not energy healing. With a very gentle touch, we are working with the structure and alignment of the body. If like form and function have a relationship, if there is a form and design to the body, it's to create a certain function. So by looking at the structure, musculoskeletal structure, we're recognizing as practitioners where are restriction patterns that are blocking circulation, that are impinging nerves, that is affecting an organ. And by disengaging that, we're able to restore balance and health in the body.
Does this and your sacred dance, can you talk about the connection between these two?
So outside, they're not connected. Inside me, they're connected. Yeah. So as a dancer, I have a very artistic, creative side, which is present when I'm in a session. I'm able to see the body in a slightly different way. I see the body in ways that an artist would see the body. That's helpful. I find that that's helpful because I'm not focused on symptom and I'm not focused on the problem. I'm able to see how health is flowing in the body. I'm also, as a dancer, I'm also able to understand from my own experience how my body functions, because I'm so much involved with movement, alignment, balance. And when people come with musculoskeletal issues in their body and injuries, I really have a physiological sensibility and experience of how to bring this muscle and joint into correction. In that way, the dancers help my craniosacral therapy. My craniosacral therapy gives me a lot of grounding. It's like the roots of the tree that really still me, and my dance is something that takes me up into the sky. And between the two, I'm managing to stay in this world.
That's really interesting,
Zia, I would like to ask you a question, ma'am. Shall I?
Yeah, sure.
Zia, you had mentioned that in your childhood, you used to be pretty dreamy as a girl. And now that you are into dances, Do you see a connect there, that dancing happens when we are dreamy, or dreamy people are better dancers, or any correlation?
Not
Uh,
really. Actually, in dance, we have to have a lot of sharpness of attention. So that was, in the beginning, that was a challenge for me when I got into dance. My mind was always floating so much that to get into structured choreographed dance, to hold my attention, really just be present, be here, be with the rhythm, be with with the choreography and the coordination, was definitely a challenge, and I've had to work a lot on that. On the other hand, with whirling, whirling is really an artist, like a free space, free mind artist dance. You just whirl and there's nothing to follow. There's no structure to follow apart from the meditation of the whirling itself holds you in a centered alertness and awakening process. So whirling is something that's more natural to my dreamy mind. And the Gurdjieff movements and Odyssey has helped me develop very sharp, fine-tuned, centered presence. And that's been a very beautiful development for me.
So that's alertness. That is alertness.
Yes.
Being in the moment.
Why I was interested in knowing this was because with hyperactive, hyper energetic children now in primary classes in schools, generally dance is one performing art
Yeah.
which is suggested for such children to bring them into focus, to make them stay connected, not to be too fidgety. So do you believe that this should be undertaken like a therapy, dance
Very
movement?
much. And there are dance therapies, movement therapies that are already existing, that are already being incorporated. They are more at a it's existing and thriving more on outside of educational institutions. But I think that definitely institutions for primary education should incorporate this for kids who just have a lot of energy, kids with ADHD, kids with other learning disabilities. This dance will really help them, because when we are dancing, we are really using our somatic intelligence. We're using our body intelligence, and we really underestimate. We're so caught up with intellectual quotient, that's IQ. We're so caught up with emotional quotient, that's our emotional intelligence. Nobody's talking about body intelligence, that's somatic intelligence. Yet here's a scientific fact: in our nervous system, we have 25% of the nerves from the brain coming down to the body, sending messages and signals. And we have 75% of nerves from the body giving information to the brain. That is the amount of information that the body is continuously gathering from the environment around, continuously working to regulate itself with adapting to changing environment and informing the brain of what is happening. But we are not tuned into this. So anything like yoga, dance, movement therapy, somatic work helps us to tune into body intelligence, which is essential for children, because children's development in the first 10 years is physical. It's more physical than intellectual, and we should align with that.
In
So
fact,
you're taking
to
classes
make them
also.
sit at a place and maybe indulge in some meditation or yoga. It's difficult, but it seems with what you are telling, probably this type of dance or some type of training like this would really be of immense help.
Absolutely. And if you look at just look at the natural development of a body, we don't need scientific theories to prove it. You see the natural development of the body. The first 10 years, what is the development of a child? It's all about physical growth. So there is so much energy in the body. Now to go against nature and pull that energy away from the body into the mind is not easy. So some kids, we all have different sources of energy, and our balance is assembled differently. Some kids may take to intellectual work and reading more easily, and that's okay, that's natural for them. But that doesn't mean that kids who are not taking to it, that they are wrong. We're not actually, we've kind of pigeonholed the education system for kids, that this is how it should be. We're not opening it up and making it available to all kids. Kids who are more available in the body are not wrong, actually. We need to actually cooperate with their system.
Zia, you're taking classes. I mean, I know that you're teaching dance, right?
I do, yes.
What is that age group? Because you're talking about children, no? So, I mean, do you start right from the younger age? And
So no, the sacred dances are for adults. I teach Gurdjieff movements and Sufi whirling, and this I teach it not as a dance class. I teach it as basically sacred dance to move into mysticism, to move into meditation using the body and dance. So that even the class has a very specific orientation. People who are wanting to learn dance don't come to me. People who want to learn meditation and spirituality through their body and dance, they come for these classes. I do work with children a lot because of my work in craniosacral therapy. So I work with newborn babies. I work with birth trauma for mothers and babies, breastfeeding issues, trauma rehabilitation for mothers and babies who've had very difficult births and injuries. I work with young children with learning disability, neurological conditions. So I'm very much involved with what is happening for children, our education system. I'm often involved with the teachers of the children that I'm working with to kind of collaborate that they can.
What is this kind? I mean, what are you doing here?
Craniosacral therapy.
It's through that.
It's through craniosacral therapy. Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of children with learning disabilities, developmental issues, delayed milestones who come to me, they can be infants, they can be toddlers, they can be young kids in primary school. So when they come to me for these issues, I need to get into what is happening in the environment. I can't just give them one eye in the clinic once a week for a few weeks and expect the problem to go away. The environment is very important. So I have to get involved with the family, with their education system and all of that. So that is part of the work.
So basically, when you are talking about this therapy, you don't require medicines at all, or it is with medicines that you go in with this?
It's naturalistic and it's non-medicinal.
And people do come and trust.
And also it's very helpful because one is that it's preventive. So I often also offer the work as preventive healthcare. It helps you maintain your system, especially corporate people who are in a really stressful job, frequent flying, long hours. How do you maintain your health? You don't have to get sick and then come for treatment. You can maintain your health and lifestyle. So I work with them. And then also people who are on lifestyle diseases and on heavy medication. By working with them, we're able to reduce the medication, in many cases, eliminate the medication altogether.
Okay, there's one question that I asked you earlier also that was left unanswered. Like I said, whirling is, something which really takes you over. And was there ever a moment or such an experience which you can share with us where you really felt centered, or that Zia was lost, Zia was not Zia at all?
It happens every time.
Every time. So it's kind of that kind of a meditation that whenever you are in this...
every time I get into it. But I'll tell you something. See, it is something that develops, right? If I'm starting as a beginner, that profound melting and dissolving didn't happen initially. But as I got into it, and once I understood the technique and I dropped into it and I realized this is my meditation. Once you drop into the meditation of whirling, and the whirling can go on. And it doesn't matter if you're doing for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, it goes on. It kind of, the momentum of the whirling is generating force and energy in your body. So something takes over and you can just go on. As long as the music is playing for me, I can go on. But I will tell you one very special experience, because if anyone asks me, who are your teachers in whirling? I had a whirling skirt and I had a piece of music. And these two taught me, and it's one of my most favorite stories. This was when I was in the Osho meditation resort, learning to whirl, fall. And there was this lovely musician. He was a Sufi musician. He was leaving. He had a very heavy bag. He used to see me whirling. He had a big whirling skirt, and he said, I need to lighten my bag. I'm traveling. I need to be very light on luggage. I've seen you whirling. I'd like to gift you my whirling skirt. I'm like, oh, how wonderful. It was really big, heavy. That time I was in college, end of my college days. I would not be able to afford a whirling skirt at that time. So this was like a really big gift. I felt so special. And he said, I've also cut a new whirling CD, Sufi whirling CD. If you like it, maybe it will help you in your whirling. I'm like, wonderful. I ran to my room immediately. I had a tiny room. And I was living inside the meditation resort because I was also a worker there. So I had a tiny room. I put on the skirt. Now the skirt was bigger than my room somehow, but I still put it on. I put on the music. And it was like, I just heard the music for maybe 1 or 2 minutes and something started to turn me. Now that music went on for about 25 or 30 minutes. It was a long track. and the second track was another 30 minutes. So for the next 1 hour, I was in that little space turning. And the only thing that kept me from falling is I was looking at the patterns of my skirt, and something informed me, if the patterns of my moving skirt remain steady, I will remain steady. And they
Great.
like waves. And I just held my speed by looking at the pattern of the skirt, keeping it uniform. And 1 hour passed. And that was my first, most profound, most beautiful experience in whirling. So I always say my skirt and my music are my teachers.
That's really interesting, you know. So the cosmos answered your call. And that is how the skirt and the CD came to you.
Yes, and I didn't have a question. That's the most interesting thing. I didn't have an inquiry. I had not. There was no asking. But when it came, I realized I needed it.
Yes, and you know, so you were so involved, as you're saying, that you could see the movement of your skirts.
Yeah.
That kept you naturally aligned.
Yeah.
Very deep. That was was it the deepest ever experience?
No, I mean that was my beginning. But there
That was your beginning.
in my performances, I've been very lucky to have the most beautiful venues for my performances. I was doing a performance for Jahan Khusrau Festival by Muzaffar Ali. It was in Delhi. It was at Humayun's Tomb, Arab Ki Sarai, and it happened to be a full moon. It was outdoor, and you know you're already in a heritage venue. And I was whirling, the stage was set up so beautifully. You know, Muzaffar ji and Meera ji, they just do a beautiful setup. They make it mystical, and the lights and the candles. It was just really lovely. And I was whirling. I was in the middle of my performance, not like I had planned it. But in my whirling, sometimes I really twist my body. I go up. My head is looking up at the sky. I'm kind of bent over backwards in high speed. When I did that, the moon was right above me.
Beautiful.
And, you know, magically my body kept on whirling. I didn't fall. But there were, I don't know how many seconds went that I was just stuck with the moon. My presence was with the moon. And at some point I came back to normal whirling. But apparently my body had moved so fast that the whole audience had stood up and started clapping. That kind of distracted me a bit, and I came back. And I had to complete the show. I could not suddenly stop. But at the back of my mind, I kept wondering, what happened there? Like, what happened there? In the night, I couldn't sleep. I was still wondering, like, what happened there? Something happened there. I think that was my first real connection with outer space, out of body,
That's
into
amazing.
the moon.
That's
kind
amazing.
Of
That's really, I mean,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
So I've had many such. Yeah, I think that the natural elements really support me in my meditations. I've had many such experiences, like in the desert, there was a beautiful performance, and, you know, by the riverside, there was a beautiful performance. Whenever I'm in these elements, they support you in your meditation.
So you become one with the nature. This is what you mean to say.
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah, absolutely. It's so vast.
And once when you stop whirling, you know, it's all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Can you just share that, you know, thing from movement to sudden silence?
So, you know, I'll explain it like this. In Tai Chi, in the Chinese, let's say, heritage, in their spirituality, they have the yin and yang symbol,
Yes.
right? So one represents movement, the other represents tranquility, or let's say stillness or quietness, but it's not a stuck space. There's still a flow in it. So movement or action is like how the yin and yang is formed in the circle. When you reach the end limit of movement, it turns into tranquility.
Yes.
When you reach that end moment of tranquility, it turns into movement.
Yes.
So either your mind is aware of movement, reaching to the end, then your mind is aware of tranquility. So mind is divided, either this or this. But what if the mind can hold both? If the attention and the presence can hold both, the movement and the stillness together. So when I stop from a really intense whirling experience, I'm in that wholeness. Like something is still moving in my field, in my body. Everything is still moving because my heart is racing, the circulation is pumping, the whole momentum in the field is still vibrating. And yet something, the mind, the emotions, the belly, everything has got so quiet and still. right in the center, and to be able to experience both, to be able to experience yin and yang at the same time.
Yes. So that's merging of the yin yang, you may say, you may call it Shiv, and Shav Shakti, or I mean, it's becoming one.
Yes.
Okay. With this oneness, there's one more question that comes to me. These days, not these days, in fact, we are all talking about unity, unity in religion, focusing on one God, focusing on one temple, mosque, or church. We talk of unity, but in a confined this thing, There is a difference between unity and oneness.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
How can people like you, or let's say who are into spirituality, contribute to this? And how can they bring oneness of consciousness?
See, I think when we talk about oneness, we have to start with ourselves first, right? If I am myself disintegrated, so now we have, as human beings, we have many sources of energy. Some of us are intellectually inclined, some of us are emotionally inclined, very much in the heart space. Some of us are very physically inclined. These people will be fitness enthusiasts, sports people, things like that. Heart and emotional people will be artists. Intellectual people will be lawyers. Nothing wrong. But if we are not conscious of this and we are only going as per what is working well and ignoring the other sources of energy, there is an imbalance. There's a disintegration, right? A lawyer will not know how to hold intimate relationship with his lover, and an artist will not know how to have logic in their relationship. So we are disintegrated. When we talk about oneness, it's important to recognize scientifically, what is this human body made of? What is its most evolved expression designed to be? So the oneness is right here, when my mind, when my heart, when my body can be in equilibrium, can have equal sources of energy and live in an integrated way. When this happens, when this beautiful alignment of oneness happens in my body, automatically I'm feeling in oneness with the environment around. Right. Automatically I'm recognizing there is no differentiation. What makes me in wholeness also holds the tree in wholeness, also holds an animal in wholeness, and it's not possible to then not be able to see the connection of one life energy moving through all of us.
Right. What would be your contribution in spreading this? How will you be able to convey this, or make people understand? Because this is the need of the hour.
Yes, I do it through my dance workshops. I do it through my dance performances.
Yes.
And I've heard it many times from the audience when they're watching the dance performance. I also don't like to say, oh, they're watching me, because I've already disappeared when I'm in my dance performance. Something takes over, it's the dance that is there. So that's a humbling experience. When the audience is watching the dance, often I get the feedback, they come backstage or they'll write to me. They just say, we saw you disappear, we also disappeared. There was such a sense of connectedness, such a sense of oneness. When I hold the workshops, this is what the workshop is about. The workshop is to come into this space of alignment. So this is my tiny contribution.
Right. And this is what you're teaching your students. It is a teaching kind of a thing.
The thing is, if my one little disappointment here is, see, I'm an individual. I don't have a big corporate setup and big marketing.
Yes.
And what I can do as an individual, single mother, making ends meet, my clinic, craniosacral dance, it's still on a small scale, right? It's what I can do as an individual. To do more, I would have to be business minded, which I am not. And I'm not willing to be, my mind doesn't go there. So the disappointment is that the people who come to me are already in that space. They are already in that understanding. I really would like to take this to a prison. I'd like to bring this to people who are, who are doing time in prison. I'd like to bring this to people who are already in conflict or in war. But I don't know how to reach them, because that's where we need to take it and introduce it. People who are already aligned with this, know this theoretically, come, they learn it practically, great. But they're already in it. So I'm not able to get to the point where we really need to.
But if your desires are so intense, one day you will definitely
I
reach
hope.
reach people, right?
Yeah.
And bring them into your own space, as you
Yeah.
say.
Or someone can just carry me into their space.
Okay. And how do you manage your professional life? You're a healthcare professional, and your sacred dances. Time for this. How do you
Yeah.
manage to bring them together?
Yeah, somehow it happens. I don't know.
Somehow it happens because it is your intense desire
I,
to be at both the places.
yeah, no, I do have some kind of regulation. I work 4 or 5 days a week with my clinic practice. And then I have time for yoga 3 or 4 times a week in the evenings. I take 2 to 3 hours. No, I take about 6 hours of dance in a week, 6 to 8 hours of dance in a week with dance practice and dance training. And when I have performances, if it's a performance season, I have like 2, 3 performances every month for 4, 5 months, typically from October to Feb, that's performance season. Then I just bring in more time for dance. I'm doing night rehearsals and things like that. I'm somehow not able to compromise on clinic time because that is just a responsibility. I have to be available with the patients. But then I kind of take on more time with night rehearsals and manage somehow.
Okay. Yeah, you are into Odissi dance now.
Yeah.
Also, I should say.
Yes.
Has any other form of dance fascinated you, and you think that this too can take you towards the higher, realms, I should say. Help you progress
Yeah.
in your journey.
Yeah. You mean you're asking if there's any other dance form?
Yeah.
I think every
Whirling
dance,
is one. You said Odissi is another that you picked up.
and then Gurjev.
And
Gurjev,
positive movements that you okay.
yeah.
Anything, any other Indian dance that you feel that this can take you slightly higher, maybe?
So, the thing is, once you come into that realm, we're not in a linear space anymore. It's not about this is my spirituality and now this is the
Yes.
next level and next level. No, it then becomes an open field, right? So I don't see it as linear, as now I can get more spiritual. I don't see it that way. And with Indian classical dances, they are all temple dances. They are all from origin sacred dances. So any Indian classical dance can bring you into that space. All of them talk about bhakti and surrender and the stillness of the mind and the union of the body. All of them have yoga in their background for conditioning the body. So all our Indian classical dances are sacred temple dances.
That's beautiful. And as beautiful as you are, you're so elegant, so graceful as your videos that I saw.
Thank you.
I can see that. Doctor, would you like to ask Zia something?
Yeah, I'm much fascinated to listen to your story of life, Jia.
Thank
Excellent. It is like dancing your way to meditation, dancing your way to centeredness, dancing your way to oneness, dancing your way to maybe self-realization or even more. That's most wonderful.
Thank you.
And I personally would like to invite you for the Third World Parliament on Spirituality as a presenter. Under the theme Spirituality, Arts and Culture. Jyotiji will give you details later, and I'm very happy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It was a wonderful journey, Zia. Definitely. It was something very amazing and inspiring, to have. I'm so happy to have known you and talked to you. We have you here on this platform because somebody taking her passion to deep into spirituality is amazing, right?
It happened. It's not like I had planned it. I haven't planned anything that has happened so far. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a vision. I didn't have knowledge. Something just kept coming and I kept responding, and here I am. And where I will be 10 years later, I have no knowledge, but I'll just flow with the river, with whatever life offers. And that's easy for me. That feels natural for me.
I had this question since lot many times, but then because the conversation was happening continuously, you mentioned your experience at the Humayun's tomb, that you looked up and you had this question, what was there?
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned you did not have a guru, so to say,
Yeah.
who would direct you or instruct you. But now in your capacity and the sacred dances that you are dealing with, don't you think you have to be a guru so that this passes on to the next generation? So guru comes in the being. So how do you know guru for you, or guru was nature itself?
Yeah,
The
for me,
inspiration would come.
I'd say, now I really feel in the 21st century that there is a shift in the understanding of guru and disciple, of master disciple. There's definitely a big shift. I also think because of so much availability and accessibility to humans all over the world through information technology and travel, that it's not necessary to have a guru. More than that, as a human race, we have evolved to a space where we can be our own masters. And we
Wonderful.
can have orientation and guidance from such a rich spiritual heritage that masters from the past have left for us, that we need not be restricted to one guru or one teaching. And that's been my journey. I've been influenced by Zen Buddhism, by Sufism, by Confucianism, by Buddhism, by Jainism, by the Upanishads, by Christianity, by Osho. I mean, how many gurus? So many. There was such a richness that I could choose from, and I still choose from today. So I'm not focused on one guru, one teacher, but I do like to align to my own inner wisdom that informs me, that helps me on my path, while I have the guidance of so much on the outside.
If you remain a learner, you're open to all. You're
Yes.
open to everything around you.
Yeah.
You're already a guru then.
No, I actually don't like that. I much rather
You should not, you don't like yourself to be called. So you don't want to be a master, as you say.
I am a master with the work that I do. I don't
Yes.
want to take on the responsibility of being a master for someone else and limit their journey. That's important. My journey was never limited by one master.
Yes.
I would not want to do that to someone else. But I am a master for what I do for myself.
And you leave it open for others.
Yes.
Your knowledge is open.
It's
Very good.
completely open.
Yes.
It was a very interesting answer. Very interesting answer in the sense nowadays, as this latest new generation, in fact, they say that we are all ekalavyas.
Yeah.
And this social media and all, this is our dronacharya. So as and when we want to be inspired, we have it all on the net.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I think it's wonderful that humanity has evolved to this space, thousands of years ago, we didn't have this evolution, but today we have. Science has brought this evolution to us.
Yes.
So it's beautiful that science and spirituality are actually parallel to one another right now.
That
Very
was
interesting.
wonderful. It was really wonderful, and it's so inspiring because, not running after one, you leave your mind open, and whatever comes your way, you're ready to take it. I think that is what it should be. I think the sir will tell us more about. Is there any more questions from your end?
Yeah, wonderful. I'm much fascinated. Learning from many teachers make you a teacher. So if you are confined to only one teacher, you lose many teachers in your life. So learning from many systems, many schools of thought, from many wise men, makes you certainly wise. You become your sabka sunna apna karna.
It keeps you open.
Excellent.
Otherwise, people
And it also
confine
shows
themselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
But the other thing is that when you have so much diversity in your learning, you realize they're all saying the same thing.
Yes.
Everyone is saying the same thing, but there is so much creativity in the way it's presented. And that's beautiful. I love the creativity of the Zen haikus. I love the creativity of the Sufi poetry and song. I love the intellectual, verses of the Upanishads. I love all of that. There's so much creativity, but they're all saying the same thing.
Yes. And your own creativity, that is bringing to the world in one space again. See for yourself. So you're also doing the same thing, aren't you?
Yes, I am in my dance. In what I offer dance. Yes, I'm saying the same thing, but I'm using the language of the body.
Yes, you're saying the same thing using your body, right? So it was wonderful Very
Yeah, I have a
nice.
question, Jiaji. In the present world, for the 7.5 billion population across the world, with so much of diversity everywhere, linguistic diversity, cultural diversity, spiritual diversity even, can we think of something like any unified consciousness? Can we think of, if you take business people or political people, they do collaborate when situation strikes. So similarly, in the spiritual world, when everybody is in a scattered way of activity, in an individualistic way of activity, can we think of doing something collectively to build the collective consciousness of the world? What are your inputs on this?
I feel the collective consciousness is already there. What is missing is our awareness to it.
Yeah.
The collective consciousness is already there.
Yeah.
We don't have to create it. If I tune in my awareness to it, I pick up the information in the collective consciousness, which guides me. So what we have to do is to start fine-tuning our awareness, which comes a lot with meditation techniques. If there's anything that can unify all the diversity, it's meditation. And then in meditation, there are so many techniques of meditation. So that's okay. We don't need to have one meditation. Each person can take their own, methodology that works for them. Active people can take active meditation. Passive people can take vipassana. It anyways brings us to the same point. And then we tune in, we dip into the collective consciousness, where we recognize that there is only one source of energy that's bringing shape, form, color, and the diversity everywhere, which is beautiful. It has its beauty. I like to take my lessons from nature. If I'm in a thick, dense forest, there is so much diversity in the forest. Who's to say what is better, what is not? There's so much beauty in all the plants, animals, birds, herbs, flowers, the smells, everything. There are predators, there are victims, all of it is there. That's how the forest maintains its balance. But the intelligence of wild animals is actually what we can learn from. They know how to keep their forest in balance. This is what we need to learn. And like you mentioned, that the individuality, there is so much emphasis on individuality. Krishnamurti said, the need of the hour is not self-development anymore. It's about self-cessation. Can we die onto our individuality a little bit and maybe just focus on the collectiveness of the world around us, which is, what you are bringing over here. So
Jiddu Krishnamurti believed in individuality, from individuality to the society, and then to the nations, then to the world. This was his belief.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely right. It was so interesting. The talk, your story, everything, and we really enjoyed, and we are so thankful to you for being with us today. Right? Thank you so much, Zia. Thank you so much, Zia.
Wonderful.